The rain had finally stopped falling over Uyo, but the clouds still hung low, as if refusing to leave. Inside a dimly lit office at the Federal Criminal Investigation Department, a man sat alone, surrounded by dusty case files. Samuel Johnson, retired investigator, 61 years old. Once feared for his precision, now forgotten by the system. He stared at a file marked Unsolved Case, Old Creek Fire, 1997. For years he had tried to forget it, but some cases never truly disappear. They only wait. Samuel opened the file slowly. Inside were yellow documents, statements, burn reports, witness notes, and a single blurred photograph of a burned settlement. His hands trembled slightly as he flipped the pages. Then he stopped. A name, typed in bold letters. Child. Emmanuel Johnson. Samuel frowned. He had seen that name before. Not in this file. Not in his career. But somewhere else. Somewhere more recent. He reached for a second folder beside him. The Victor James investigation file. He opened it and froze. There it was again. The same name. Emmanuel Johnson. Samuel leaned back slowly. Something was wrong. Very wrong. 2 cases, separated by 28 years. Same name, same village, same fire. Samuel closed his eyes. The past came back like smoke. Old Creek Village. A fire so large it could be seen from miles away. He remembered arriving at the scene. Burned bodies. Collapsed homes. Children crying. And chaos everywhere. But one thing stood out. A missing child. A boy. Unaccounted for. No body ever recovered. Official report? Deceased. But Samuel never believed it. Because something didn't feel right. No remains, no confirmation, no closure, just silence. Now, decades later, that same case was knocking on his door again. Only this time, it had a new connection. Victor James. Samuel drove through the rain-soaked streets of Uyo that evening. The case file sat on the passenger seat. He replayed everything in his mind. Victor James. The hospital attack. The hidden agreement. The burned village photograph. The scratched-out child. Everything was connected. But how? He parked outside a small hospital where Victor was still admitted under police protection. 2 armed officers stood outside his room. Samuel showed his identification.
They let him pass. Inside, Victor lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He looked weaker than before, but his eyes were alert. Aware, Samuel approached slowly. Victor James. Victor turned his head slightly. I need to ask you something. Victor said nothing. Samuel placed the photograph of Old Creek on the bed. The moment Victor saw it, his breathing changed. Subtle, but visible. His fingers tightened. Samuel noticed. You recognize it. Still no answer. Samuel leaned forward. This village, this fire, it connects to you. Victor finally whispered, Don't go there. Samuel frowned. Why? Victor turned his head away. His voice cracked slightly. Because some things were never meant to be remembered. Outside the hospital corridor, Grace arrived with Daniel. Her face was pale. She had not slept properly in days. Everything was collapsing. Her mother's disappearance, the threats, Victor's silence. Now this investigator asking questions. She stepped into the room. Who are you? Samuel stood. Samuel Johnson, former investigator. Daniel frowned. What do you want? Samuel looked at Grace. I think your partner is connected to an old case. Grace stiffened. What case? Samuel held up the file. Old Creek Fire. Grace froze. That name again. The same name from the photograph. Samuel continued. A child disappeared that night. No body was ever found. And I believe that child is still alive. Silence filled the room. Grace slowly turned toward Victor. Her voice shook. Victor, what is he talking about? Victor said nothing, but his silence was louder than any answer. Samuel opened the file again. He pointed to the name, Emmanuel Johnson. Grace frowned. What about it? Samuel looked at her carefully. This is the missing child. Daniel laughed nervously. That's impossible. Samuel shook his head. It's not impossible. It's just hidden. He turned the file towards Grace. And here's the strange part. This name appears again in your partner's documents. Grace stepped closer. Her heartbeat slowed. The world felt unstable. What documents? Samuel hesitated, then said, the secret agreement Victor signed. Grace felt a chill. Samuel continued, and in those documents, the same name appears under an alternate identity record. Daniel frowned. What are you saying exactly? Samuel looked at all of them. I'm saying The missing child didn't just survive the fire. He paused. He was taken. Silence. Then he added the final words and raised under a new identity. Grace stepped back slowly. No. Samuel nodded. Yes. Daniel shook his head. This is insane. But Grace wasn't listening anymore. Her mind was racing. If Emmanuel Johnson was real, if the child survived, then who was Victor James? Or worse, who was she trusting all these years? Victor finally spoke again, barely audible. You don't understand what you are digging into. Samuel leaned closer. Then explain it. Victor shook his head. His voice broke slightly. If you knew, you wouldn't sleep again. Grace stepped forward. I deserve the truth. Victor looked at her. For the first time, real sadness appeared in his eyes. I tried to bury it, but it keeps coming back. Samuel pressed. The fire wasn't an accident, was it? Victor closed his eyes. A long silence followed. Then finally, no. The room went still. Daniel whispered, "Then what was it?" Victor opened his eyes and said the words that changed everything. A cover-up. Grace staggered slightly. A cover-up for what? Victor looked at her. His voice dropped. For something much bigger than all of us. Samuel stepped back slowly. This is no longer just a missing child case. He pointed at Victor. This is identity manipulation. He turned to Grace. And you are standing in the middle of it. Grace's breathing quickened. What are you trying to say? Samuel answered carefully. Someone erased a child's identity, rebuilt lives around that lie, and protected it for nearly 3 decades. Daniel shook his head. That's impossible. Samuel turned to him. Then explain why someone tried to kill Victor twice already. Silence. No answer. Only tension. Only fear. As Samuel gathered his files to leave, Victor suddenly grabbed his wrist. Weakly, but urgently. Stop. Samuel looked at him. Victor's eyes were intense. Leave this alone. Samuel frowned. Why? Victor whispered. Because if you find the truth, he paused, you won't just lose the case. His grip tightened slightly. You will lose your life. Samuel stared at him, then slowly pulled his hand away. I've heard threats before. Victor shook his head. This isn't a threat. It's a promise. A cold silence filled the room. Samuel left without another word. But as he walked away, he already knew. This case was no longer about a missing child. it was about something far more dangerous. Something buried beneath years of lies. And someone powerful enough to kill, to keep it buried. Back inside the room, Grace sat beside Victor. Her voice was barely audible. "Tell me the truth." Victor looked at her. Long silence. Then finally he whispered, "The missing child." Grace leaned closer. "Is not the only one." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Victor's next words broke everything she believed. "There were more than one child in that fire." Grace froze. Victor continued, "And not all of them died." The implication hung in the air like a shadow. Down, Daniel stepped back slowly. Samuel's words echoed in Grace's mind. Identity erased. Lives rebuilt. Truth buried. And now, everything was collapsing into one terrifying question. If Victor wasn't the only survivor, then who else was still out there? And why were they coming back now